All right.
There you go.
All right, Joe.
I was in warp speed mode that time. Boy,
Dude,
you
you're
have
good.
every Christian and mama right in you.
As we hit about every topic you could have. We were talking about blood samples and tribes and
There's a lot
religion and
on the go to. Well,
dinosaurs.
this will give them questions for you next time you have me on. They'll because sometimes I'll stick with one thing and I'll just work through the whole show on it. But with y'all, I like to kind of cross a lot of topics because I've talked with y'all quite a few times
Oh
over the
yeah.
years, and I've met some of y'all. A matter of fact, I remember when y'all were on, when y'all were still in, what was it? Where were y'all at? North Carolina? So where the hell y'all were? And I was in D.C. doing an election, and somebody came up and they said, "Oh, I've heard you a couple of times." I said, "Where?" And they said, "You ever heard of Wheeling?" I said, "Yeah, I know exactly where." You heard me. I said, "Yeah." I said they're on our network. I said, so they come by and see it. I got to figure out a place to put y'all so y'all can get some extra playtime. See, I want to be careful because I don't want to put you somewhere where you're going to get a lot of playtime, not because it's bad for you, but if you're trying to monetize, it hurts you. You know, because if somebody knows they can come, so what we do a lot of times is we slip y'all on like Podbean or one of the smaller versions where like Podbean does, I don't know, 3 or 4 million a month over there between all the shows that's on it, where SoundCloud does far more than that does. But when people are trying to monetize, I don't try to stick them on the big ones. I try to put them on the little ones so people will go looking for y'all.
Yeah.
They'll type in your name or type in your show and you'll find it here and find it there. And then sometimes we do every other show. That way they have to come.
What we do here is kind of that after interview, talk.
So
Usually
those work.
usually a good
That
story
works.
comes out of that or something like that.
Yeah,
For you, I want to talk
yeah that
about some
works.
alien classifications.
Yeah, I know. I haven't done it myself, but I know several hosts that are using Patreon for exactly what you're using it for, and they're having pretty decent success. Some, better than others, but um, still, they had pretty decent success with it.
It's kind of like a
And it
behind
doesn't.
the curtains.
Yeah, and well, see, that's how when we first started doing radio, that's why we got so popular so fast. We were the only ones that had a chat room at the time where the guests would come and sit and talk to the people, only the people in chat.
Mm-hmm.
So you couldn't, if you were trying to get in a question, and you'd have to come to the chat room to ask a question.
I
So
remember the
it felt
chat
like
room.
it's more personal for them. They could come sit and talk with the chat room. And there may have been 100, 200 people in the chat, whereas there were several 100,000 or million on the outside servers. But they liked it better. The host liked it, the guests liked it, and the listeners liked it. So it worked well.
That was
We did
Pal
that for
Talk, right?
a long time. Yeah, it was on Pal Talk, and
Yeah.
then we just outgrew Pal Talk. Unfortunately, it couldn't handle the quality in video and audio. And then once we added video, things got more complicated
Oh yeah.
because we have 8 video feeds. So you never know who's looking at what or what's looking at who. And I just added LinkedIn recently because we got, I think, 27,000 followers over there. So I added them in weekly, and it works. I mean, it's you just never know what's going to work with who there. And then I noticed when I do our statistics across different podcast sites, it's whole different groups of people. Like on YouTube, we have hardly no women listening to us at all. It's like 26%. Um, it's almost all guys, and it's guys from between like 26 and 76. But you
Really?
get on SoundCloud, and it's 58% female.
I was about to say the majority of my listeners are female.
It just depends what I'm on. Now, my own personal show, UF on the Cover, since day one, it's been like 65% female. But that's because of that stupid Kuyon accent I got.
I was just getting ready to say they just want to hear that sexy voice.
So it's a shame, but that's really what it is. A female friend of mine goes, she says, "Not that you don't do good radio." I said, "I know exactly what you meant." I said, "I'm the same way." I said, "I hear a girl from Australia or from the UK, man or woman." I said, "I find their voices more interesting to listen to, even though they may not be saying anything I want to hear. I still like their voices better." And it's true for us. It works for us, especially Southern guys and females, because we carry a heavier accent than the Northern friends that we have,
Mm-hmm.
except for my Bostonian friends. They have just outrageous accents. I thought I had a bad one. I went to go potty in the car, then the con, I went to my butt. I'm like, wait, what? What did you just say? Come back, tell me that again. I lost out somewhere around there. I got a lot of friends in Boston. I met when I was in the Navy, and that's where I met Pete Hilton from. Was in the Navy. I asked this guy, I said, "You're a Hilton and you're in the Navy?" He's like, "Yep." I'm like, "Why?"
Why?
He's like, "Well, let me just tell you, I got irritated with my family." I said, "Okay, that's fine." I remember we went to his house in Los Angeles, big, huge mansion, big pool with a big H in the bottom. I had no idea that the little girls I were meeting were going to be famous later on in life. I know who the hell they were. He was the brother of the other brother, and I was like, it was great. They treated me like gold. And any place we stayed, like when we got out of boot camp, we got a suite at the Hilton. When we were in Tennessee out of Tech, we got 2 suites at the Hilton. It was insane. His dad paid for everything.
That's cool.
When I mean everything, I mean everything. Well, anything you could imagine was at the party when we got there. I was like, wow. And I was like, okay, we're gonna all go into jail now. We ain't just got the boot camp. We're gonna all be in jail tomorrow. He was interested in my friend Pete. He was from the other Pete. He was from Boston. There was 3 of them from Boston. They used to drive me crazy with their accents. And then they would start talking to my friend from Waco, Texas, and I had no idea what they were talking about. I'm like, okay, I'm getting out of this conversation now. Because I thought my accent was bad. I had nothing on either one of them. And then after spending 18 months of traveling around the country in the Navy, my accent, people kept asking me if I was from England. I'm like, no, I'm not from England. I'm from New Orleans. Oh, no, you got an English accent. What happened was 2 of my good friends I was stationed with were transferred over from England. So we were always talking. So I guess over that course of that year, I picked up their accent. When I got home, everybody was like, where the hell did that accent come from? I'm like, what are you talking about? And they're like, Joe, do you listen? A friend of mine, let me record you and let you listen to yourself.
That's funny.
That was the first time I actually realized that my accent had changed so much. It's from traveling there, And it does. Now I got to watch myself because I'll instantly revert to someone else's accent if I'm talking to them, which can be considered as a slight if you're not careful, especially if it's somebody Oriental or something.
So tell me what got you into aliens.
Wait, say that again?
Tell me what got you into aliens.
A good friend of mine who was a female who was a mother of 4. She was a very powerful politician at the time, very wealthy. For some reason, I was at work one day at my store, and she just went off and started telling me about alien contact. And I still remember this, looking at this woman like, what are you? I was 17 at the time. And I'm thinking, what are you, crazy? And then about 2 weeks later, out of the blue, another woman just starts telling me about it. And then I left for boot camp. I went off to the Navy. And while I was in the Navy, I was in Airedale, so I was on the carrier, and I was around a lot of pilots. I worked on their jets. And a lot of pilots just started telling me about these weird things they would see, stuff that would shadow their ships. And I'm thinking, why am I hearing all of this? Because before that, no one ever talked about it.
Yeah.
It was just out of the sudden. So, I get out of, I met other people in the service, and I would never bring it up. I still don't to this day. I don't bring it up myself. Someone always brings it up with me. It's a little different now because I know my face has been around and my voice has been around. But so, I did my time in the Navy. I come home. I'm at a party, really high-end party with some extremely wealthy people. And I'm sitting there. I got a nice buzz, and I'm sitting in the corner with my girlfriend, just listening. And these 3 women and this guy are talking about these aliens that used to come take them. And the guy noticed I was listening. I said, I'm sorry, I'm curious because I've heard this from other people. And all of these people, these were wealthy. These are people who have lost their livelihood for just talking about this.
Yeah.
Especially back, and we're talking in, early 80s. And I'm like, no way, man, no way. So I was, when I met my wife, I was about a year into it. She tells me one night, I think, and she told me I was just floored. I was like, well, that's it. We're getting a divorce. I said, you need to go. Because when people tell me this, my first response was, you need to go talk to a psychologist or something. Because I really didn't at that time. It's not that I didn't believe that there was life out there. I just didn't think it was bothering with lonely humans.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to stop one day. I think I was 19 or 20. I was about 21. And I sat down and I'm thinking, why do I keep hearing this? Why does it all keep landing in my lap? Why are these people who have, careers that could be not just lose their career, but they could be embarrassed beyond belief and still out there looking for answers? So I said, maybe I'll start looking into this. So then I meet this guy, Gregory Avery. He's an attorney, high-dollar, multi-million-dollar attorney, right? He started seeing these weird orbs in his backyard and taking pictures. And we met some club or somewhere, and he was showing them to me one night. I was like, what the hell? and we got to talking, and he did hypnosis and stuff like that. So I got some people I'd like you to hypnotize. So I brought him in, and I sat there and listened, and we established the rules of hypnosis early on. You couldn't say words like aliens or spaceships. And so we, on the hypnosis, all this stuff kept coming out, and I'm like, why in the hell? After that, I was addicted almost. It took over my life. And it's weird how this takes over people's life. It just took over my life. Next thing I know, 10 years has passed. I've got thousands of hours of research, and I've got connections all over the place. Friends I've met, politicians I've met, people in the military I've met, because I got a Class 10 security clearance, which is way to hell up there. And I just kept meeting, and even today, out of the blue, I'm in Salt Lake City. I'm sitting there talking to the lady who's cleaning the rooms, just some maid. And we got to talking. She said, "Oh, what are you down for?" She said, "Oh, I'm down to Salt Lake City. I come down to work press for the conference." She said, "Yeah, I wanted to go. Maybe I got to talk to somebody about my weird alien experience I'm having." And she went off for the next 45 minutes telling me about her abduction.
Wow.
And I'm just like, so then I've learned over the years that people don't meet me by accident anymore. Generally, if someone meets me that I take to, they're a contactee. Under hypnosis, they always turn out to be contact. It's like there's a thing on a bathroom wall on a spaceship somewhere. Contact Joe. I don't know how to explain it. It's weird, but it still happens. I'm 58 now, and I mean, it still happens. It's like it just keeps piling up. More and more people come on. Recently, more people came on, and people who know me will write to me. Or people who've heard me speak or stuff like that will write to me. That's fine, but people that don't know me from being, and a lot of times I don't look the same in person as I do on television, especially if you see me in the daytime, because I'm usually in work clothes. In a construction company. So if I'm in the field, I'm in boots, jeans, and a t-shirt, and sometimes pretty raggedy looking boots and t-shirts. And still, my son was laughing the other day. We were somewhere week before last fall. We were eating, stopped to have lunch, and we're eating. And this girl just comes, sits down next to us, and her friend, and starts talking about aliens. And then the one girl looks at me. She said, "You look familiar." I said, "Yeah, you'd hear a lot." And my son's laughing. And she's like, "What are you laughing about?" She said, "He's like the number one abduction researcher in the country, right?" "That's where I know you from." Oh my God. I'm like, Jesus, why'd you have to say anything? And, but it took over my life let me put it like this, before I even realized that 40 years had gone by, just 40 years. And we have 111,000 cases on file, 87,000 of which have been hand documented. It means that one of our researchers personally went out and met these people and did the research on it. Nothing in the database. If it's in our database, it had to have met a 55% criteria, because we have abduction criteria. And so it had to meet that criteria to make it into the files. And it's amazing how many people write to us even today. And I don't even advertise the organization. I haven't in a decade. I for a lack of a better way, I kind of took a decade off from the public side of this. Because, my first 10 years, I wasn't in the public eye, and then I got kind of thrown into it. But the last 10 years, I was kind of trying to, I was still doing gigs here and there and stuff like that. But for the most part, I was trying to stay out of it and just stick to the research, because the blood type thing took me down a road I wasn't expecting. First off, I wasn't even expecting there to be a difference in blood types. I figured alien abductees would be just the same as everybody else. 36% that, 15% that, 7% this, 1.5% that. That's what I thought was going to happen. And it wasn't. That's not what happened. Just in the first 6 months, we realized right off the bat that the RH negatives were outnumbering the RH positives 10-1. It was just insane. It just kept growing and growing and growing and growing. And every organization who picked up this work from us, with the exception of one, came up with the same exact conclusions. RH negatives seem to be preferred by the aliens, is the only way I can say it. With the exception of the free organization, they said it was all RH positive. But I had a friend of mine over there. I said, "Why don't you ask everybody what blood types they are?" And of course, they were all RH positive. So they kind of put a damper on it. Because somebody asked me one time, "Well, you're RH negative." I said, "Yes, I am." I said, "But the majority of my researchers are not. They're positive." I said, we did a thing on all the directors in the organization, and like 75% turned out to be positive, which is about what it should be. But the majority of the contactees are not. And something about that RH negative blood, maybe it's when the Gray's introduced. Whatever happened 45,000 years ago, whether it was Mother Nature, God or ET, somebody for some reason thought that we needed to have this.
Here's
That it
here's
would
a
be
question, and I want to dig in because you said that during the show part of it. You know, it being the Greys that might have done that. Like, how many? And I really do want to get into this alien classification thing because how many species, I guess, are there? What makes the Greys so important? What's the difference between the Greys and the reptilians? You know,
well. So it looks like, as best we can tell, a long time ago, the human type aliens showed up first. The reptilians may have had a colony here back when the dinosaurs roamed, and there's still some argument about that. But when man became man, the human aliens were here, and they really do think that they created us as a subspecies, as a slave species, and the reptilians intervened and gave us sentience and brought us in. But they think that's why the Greys showed up, because the Greys showed up later than the reptilians. And there's no mention in the Greys. The first time it's mentioned is in a cave, a hieroglyph in an Egyptian temple that's about 3,000 years old. That's the first time you see them. They're not even talked about before that. But after that, they're talked about. Matter of fact, after the birth of Christ, the Greys really bloomed on the scene, and the reptilians disappeared. But before the birth of Christ, it was the opposite. The reptilians were everywhere, and the Greys were never even heard about. What most people think is the Greys, because they believe the Greys work for the light beings in the council. They're like the galactic police force. They were engineered and modified by the light beings to basically be the galactic police force. They're supposed to be over 1 billion years old. There's 3 different colors, 4 different sizes. They go anywhere from 5 feet to up to about 9.5 feet, which is what the queen is. Queen's consorts are somewhere around 7.5 feet. They've got what I call the all-purpose Greys, around 5 to 6 feet, and then they got the worker Greys, which come 2 different styles at 3'5". There's a cyborg one that a Grey can control, which is half mechanical and half Grey, and then there's a full Grey that can control it. They're usually somewhere in the 3 to 4 foot range. They're like the guys who do a lot of the work, but it's almost the hierarchy almost seems like it's based on height. Because the taller you are, the further up the hierarchy you seem to be amongst the Greys, and it is kind of like a hive mentality.
It sounds like you're describing ants.
It does.
Because,
it sounds a lot like
I say
ants.
that we were
They,
we in my science class, because I'm a teacher. I teach 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. We are literally learning about insects and the hive mentality that they have.
And a lot of people do consider ants to be quite intelligent. We just can't figure it out because they're teensy weensy things, and we don't understand that kind of intelligence. But they're not stupid. I've watched ants build a lot.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I used to love watching them. It's but it does sound a lot like that. The reptilians are us. It's the best way to describe them, or we are them. They have an ego like we do. They have one religion. They have, I think, 9 or 10. I guess you could call them tribes or something else. Basically, reptilians in an agrarian society, with the exception of the warrior faction in their group. They're an agrarian society. They want peace. They don't want to fight. They're very laid back. They have genetic memory. They consider contactees to be family. That's why they get away with some of the stuff they do to us. But they consider us to be family, whereas the human aliens consider us at best to be a trash, distant cousin, with the exception for some reason the humans do put out a human. Yeah, they consider us to be just the low life of the galaxy.
Now,
which
would
we
that
are
be like the Nordics?
I mean, that's what well, the Nordics, they put these different names on. So the Nordics can be the humans or the Greys, depending on who you're listening to.
Okay.
I don't know why they do it, but there's a couple of races that they do that too. But the human type aliens they found this planet. There was no real life on this planet, no intelligent life when they found the planet. So they created their own workforce and started mining our planet. And then the reptilians came along and didn't like what they were doing, maybe because they were here first way back when, and they intervened on our behalf. And that's what created today's society. It wasn't until later that the Greys intervened. So this is what's so screwy about our DNA. Everybody says, why don't we have alien DNA? Well, we do. It's what our DNA looks like today. So technically, we have all 3 races' blood. We have the Greys, reptilians, and humans inside of us. So it's one of the reasons they keep such a close eye on us. One, we were a created species. So that means sometime in the future, we may surpass our creators, especially knowing that we have all 3 of them in our blood. That gives us a much bigger chance to surpass them in a much earlier race. Now, when I say that, We're talking 100 million years at least. But still, in the grand scheme of this cosmos, that's like 10 days. I mean, we live in a universe that's 14 billion years old and well on its way to doubling that. So 100 million years is not that big of a deal, especially to a gray. They have such a long lifespan anyway. But for us, of course, it's a long time. But eventually, we'll achieve the same things they've achieved. We'll be able to, use our telekinesis and our telepathic abilities and things like that. I get in trouble all the time because I like testing for telepaths. Because I'm the only person you'll ever hear say that not everyone on the planet has telepathic abilities, not even latent. Boy, people get so mad at me. I don't understand why people get so mad about it. They're like, no, Joe, everybody has it. It's just latent. No, that's not true, and I can prove it. And it's such an easy thing to prove. All you need is 2 cards in a place where there's lots of people. I do it all the time. We'll go to a mall or something. I'll take 2 cards with me, green and blue. And I'll put a sign up, we're testing for psychic abilities. Would you like to be tested? You'd be amazed how many people get in that damn line. They'll get in the line and say, you got 2 cards. I'll look up at them, and I know it's red on this, blue on this side. And I'll look at them, and I'll look at them. I'm sending the message. Do you know that most people can't even get it right 50-50?
Wow.
It's like flipping a coin. Most people get it right only about 35% of the time. Now, the odds say you should get it right 50-50, but most people don't because they're trying to overguess the odds so they get it wrong more than they get it right. Well, a true telepath, or a good empath, you look down and you say red and blue, they're going to look up at you and say, oh, that's red, that's blue, that's red, and it's going to be nonstop. You can move around, do whatever you want. You can even change cards. Oh, well, you change cards, now it's yellow and red or yellow and orange. They know. That's a telepath because they can read your mind. Someone who can is not a telepath or an empath. If they can't even sense it, then they're just not. So one of the things for you to be considered an abductee or a contactee in an organization is you have to possess empathic abilities at the very minimum. We really expect to see empathic and at least latent telepathic abilities in every contactee. Some are actually quite good. A good friend of mine, Zuby, when I first time I tested her, she got every color right. I said, oh, you smart ass. So we started doing sentences. She was reading the sentences back to the room.
Wow.
Within an hour, she was reading paragraphs we were writing, and she was even getting the punctuations right. So it was like she was looking through somebody's eyes and reading what was in front of us.
Wow.
So that's a telepath. And that's why the U.S. government, Air Force and Navy, got rid of the remote viewing program and started in 2000 the telepath program. Telepaths are just way more accurate than remote viewers are. The first time I ever interviewed, what's his name? I can't remember the colonel's name now, but I interviewed him. He was always on Coast to Coast. He was the guy in charge of remote viewing. And I still remember to this day, I said, well, what can remote viewing actually do? He said, well, you can give us a target and we can find the target. I said, can you give me the codes on the nuclear reactor? He said, oh, no, we can't do that. But we can tell you the nuclear reactor is there. Well, that's not what the military needed. The military needs somebody who can look down and see, okay, well, yeah, that's where the missile is, but this keyboard tells you what the code is.
Yeah.
That's what they needed. That's why they went after telepaths, because that's what telepaths can do versus remote viewers. And telepaths can also do remote viewing. They just, to them, it's a lesser degree than using telepathy. The ones I have a hard time finding is telekinesis.
Yeah, right.
They're very, very rare. It's rare you find anybody who has. Kevin's still out there with $1 million if anybody can move stuff. Actually, Bigelow's got a $2 million project out there.
Yeah, I heard
if
that.
y'all want to go out there. Yeah, so I mean, there are people out there who are willing to pay if you can go out there and move a coin around or slam a door or float something around. But you got to do it, and you got to be able to do it more than once.
I'm gonna be trying real hard.
And so no one yet has claimed either prize, by the way. So which suggests that it's telekinesis is just tough. And I think it has more to do with our evolution. So we've become empathic because, a lot of us worry about our children. A lot of times the moms, even dads, can sense when their child is in danger or about to be in danger. That's a true empath.
Yeah.
So if you're sitting in your, like your wife's sitting in her class teaching, and all of a sudden she gets this weird chill or this weird thing like, oh, and she gets up, I got to, because something just grabbed her and just showed her, she's connected to that child, and whatever was going on, it just popped into her head because she's connected to that child. But unfortunately, most parents do not have that ability. They want to say they do, but when you test it, they don't. But a lot do. And I notice people who are in these fields tend to possess these abilities more often than people who are not. So like if I'm looking for people, paranormal is a good place to look for abductees. The religions are a good place to find because people are searching for answers. So they usually start with religion. That's where they usually start. A lot of them will end up in the dark arts looking for it, and then they'll get into like the Wiccan religions and stuff like that, or tarot reading, because they're looking for answers, but they're looking in the wrong places because they can't. Magic is not going to give them the answer that they need.
Yeah.
They think that the abilities they have are magic. Well, no, you don't need magic. You can manifest the ability without magic, which means you're not using magic. You're manifesting it without the magic.
So let me ask: does
those
that
people,
come from
yeah,
Greys or does that come from reptilians?
they can come from any of them. Now, all
Okay.
three of them are very telepathic, and all three races are extremely telepathic. The Greys are far more telepathic than the reptilians or humans are. So, see, this is what I was talking about. We change things from time to time. When I first got into this, we thought the Greys worked for the humans and reptilians. Little funky Gray. What's he going to do against a 600, 700 pound 8 foot tall reptilian? Well, I mean, what's he going to do? Well, come to find out that the reptilians and the humans are scared of the Greys. So even if there's a little Gray, like a 3 foot Gray, people will tell you when the reptilian walks in or the human walks in, they will put their head down and look the other way and walk away from them and go stand away from them. They're actually scared of them because their telepathy is so strong they can kill with thought. They don't need weapons anymore. They control all their ships by thought. There's no physical controls in there whatsoever. They can actually physically meld with their craft. Their craft makes a blue plasma, which is a food for the Greys and fuel for the craft. It's self-replicating in its own craft. This technology is so far beyond us. Their ships are alive, where the other two races are not. These are just technologies far beyond anything. They grow their craft, their sentient craft. Three Greys will just meld with the craft itself. It's like their skin becomes its skin, and all the organs become its organ. They all just meld together. And anything they need, they think of, and the ship produces it. It's like really advanced Star Trek is what it is. They got the replicators in Star Trek.
Yeah.
Just think about this. Just think about you thinking about this, and the ship is manifesting it for you. You're not even walking over to the replicator. It's bringing it to you. When contactees are on board the ships, they will tell you things like, they'll be standing there and the room is lit, but you can't see inner lighting anywhere. It's like the walls or cells and the floors and ceilings actually have a glow to them, and it can be controlled. They said all of a sudden you'll see something like water bubbling off the floor, and it'll come up to about 4 foot, and then it spreads out and becomes like a table. When they put you on the table, the bubble starts again. It completely engulfs your body. It covers your ears, your nose, your eyes, everything. And then you're just sitting there and completely encased in this stuff. You can't move, but you can still breathe. But you can't move. You're kind of stuck. Then you'll see this thing, the wall will get an orifice coming in, and this thing will come out. And as it gets closer to you, more and more things will come out on the end of it. When it gets to you, it will fill every orifice in your body. It will stick something in every hole there is in your body. For the first or a couple of times they do this. Now, these are just beginners. There's other things that happen later on. But this is just one of the things. And when they're done, the thing, as it goes back to the wall, the equipment starts disappearing. It becomes round, and it just disappears in the wall, and the wall goes back to looking like a normal wall. So it creates and uncreates as needed. The Greys and the reptilians and humans wish they had this kind of technology. They just don't. For the most part, the reptilians and humans have what we would still call click and switch technology. For us, it would mean buttons and stuff like that. For them, it's a little bit different. They can use telepathy to an extent on their equipment, but some of it they still have to physically touch and do, especially when it comes to their medical and stuff like that. So, but they're very, very advanced themselves. Most figure that the reptilians and humans are somewhere in the 500 to 600 million year range, and that the Greys are at least 1 billion plus years old.
Now, I remember when we talked before, just on some of my experiences, you said that it sounded like the Greys got me, and you said they were really nasty little boogers. And
they can be in the beginning. So this is what's weird about all of this. That's why we have abduction criteria. So they actually take you before you're born. So they'll bring your mom in, and they physically remove the fetus from the body, and they examine it, and then they put it back. They'll do this 2 or 3 times before you're born. Then you're born. Usually within a week of your birth, they take you again. Now, what's interesting about this, all the way up into puberty, most people say, like with the Greys, my bug-eyed friend, how's my friend doing? My good friend, the bug-eyed guy, stuff like that. So kids are not scared of them. Adults are, but kids aren't. But between, say, age 12 and age 28, when puberty hits, for all three races, this is when they do the worst and nastiest experiments they can do to you. From removing sexual organs to using you for breeding programs to all sorts of other nasty things. Like the one girl, I still remember, this case sticks with me. She's not the only one like this, but this case sticks with me. She was crying, screaming, begging for him to stop, and she started screaming in Jesus' name, in Jesus' name, in Jesus' name. The Grays took her eyeballs out, turned around and faced her so she could see herself, and said, "Now get Jesus to fix this." So not only did they want to scare her, but they were vindictive, which even scares me a little, because I'm like, why'd you? So she said this enough that she actually aggravated one of them enough to do this. So it also shows they have a temper, and they can be provoked, which is something I didn't even want to know, to be honest with you. I didn't want to think of an advanced race having a temper like we have.
Right.
You know, because that's way more dangerous than we are. I mean, so they also have a sense of humor, though. The reptilians and humans especially, they get belly laughs like Klingons. The Greys are more like Vulcans in the way they deal with their emotions, but they have emotions, and they do get angry and they do get happy. And which is, but once you hit about 33, if you're still a viable part of the program, then everything changes. Your contact changes. They usually want you to get involved with what they're doing in some way or another, like either becoming a communicator, a speaker, maybe becoming a keeper where you're working with the contactees and the aliens aboard the ships. They want you to be part of that, and they will allow you to retain a way more memory once you become part of that program. You know, they're never going to let you remember everything, but they will let you retain a good 40 to 50% of your memories, and they'll help you with your downloads and stuff like that. So the contact changes, and the older you get, the more it changes. Now, a lot of people, they just dump at 30. Probably more than half of abductees and contactees get dumped somewhere right after the bad stuff happens. They get dumped because they can't deal with it. They're in a state of shock. They're freaked out all the time. They're scared of their own shadows. It's just too much for them. But some people, and I don't know why, some people just can deal with it. They volunteer. They want to go help the other people while the experiments are going on. They want to watch the kids. They want to do whatever they can. And it doesn't scare them the way it scares the other. Not that it doesn't scare them at all. It just doesn't freak them out and make them where they can't even move, where more than half the people it does. And I mean, I can't blame somebody. I mean, you open your eyes, there's a 7-foot tall, 670-pound reptilian standing there with claws and fangs and teeth, and you're looking at it and thinking, oh, I must be frickin' dinner. You know, so it can be scary. And if unfortunately you're one of the females or males that have been raped by a reptilian, that's even more to deal with. I will tell you this about that, though. When the first time I ever heard that, I thought it was BS. It took me over 100 cases to realize it was real. But I found out something. If you're forceful, and I don't mean physical, if you try to be physical with a big reptilian, a big human, or even a gray, you can get your ass whooped. That's all I can tell you. We humans, even a 3-foot gray can carry us around like a potato sack. That's how much stronger they are than we are. And the reptilians and the humans are not any less than that. They're very strong, both of them. So our physical and mental abilities are nowhere around those. So it's easy for them to intimidate us and drag us around and do things to us. But if you can be forceful in a psychic way, in a mental way. So in other words, if you can image to that reptilian, you're hurting me and this, that, and the other thing, he will quit or she will quit, because the females do it too. The alphas in the reptilian societies are allowed to, so if you're part of their family line, they can sleep with whoever they want inside their own tribe without asking, because for them, it's just the way they do things. For us, that would be considered rape. For a reptilian, it's not. It's just part of their society, because they all have genetic memory and they all understand how things work. But as humans, we don't understand that. Male or female, we just don't understand being drugged down by our feet, thrown up on a table, and have this monster-looking thing jump on us. It's not something that most humans can deal with, but there are a few that can. But mentally, if you're forceful mentally, and you can image it in their head that you're hurting me, stop, 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 even to the point where you're screaming in their head, they will stop. They really don't want to hurt you. It's just, as far as they're concerned, this is the way they do things.
Wow.
It ain't the way we do things, by the way, but it is the way they do things. It's just different. And as a race, we have to remember, other societies, as we've learned in our own world, are going to view and do things differently than we do. So it's something we need to keep in mind. The human aliens do it differently, but they've been known to have sex with humans. And I've never really heard about the Greys having sex with humans. I've heard them using this for breeding experience, but never having sex with us. But the reptilians and the humans both I've heard of, and then there's always Charles Hall's Whites.
They're
The
what?
road, there's Charles Hall. You ever heard of Charles Hall?
Uh-uh.
I don't think he does interviews anymore, but he used to be a weatherman that worked at Area 53, which is, I don't know, a couple of miles over from Area 51. And he used to go out and do the weather and do all the stuff, let everybody know about it. And then one day he was out there when he saw what. Remember the TV movie Arrival, not the new one, but the older ones, where the aliens, their legs kind of clicked back and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he said that the tall whites kind of looked like that. They were very temperamental, very easily angered, very protective of their skins. This all started. He wrote the books. Now I can't damn think of it. Millennial Hospitality, something like that. He wrote 3 of them. And he wrote about his own experiences. So the very first time I heard him talk, I thought that he was making this up. I didn't think he thought he was making it up, but I thought, because he believed everything he was saying, I just thought that maybe this was some kind of thing he was doing in his own head. So I brought him on the show 3 different times, and I brought his wife on a couple of times, and him and I hit it off real good. We talked a lot. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, I had a state trooper that worked one of the casinos call me and said, yeah, I seen one in the casino. I was like, really? And a couple of weeks after that, I had another state trooper call me and said the same thing. Then I had 2 limo drivers call me and said they drove him around Vegas. And then I had a taxi cab driver. And then I had 2 dealers. So out of the blue, all of a sudden, we ended up like 14 witnesses to the same thing he was talking about.
Wow.
So he said what used to go on is they would, on weekends, they would pick up the aliens in a limo. They would put them in pants and long coats and big glasses and hats and take them out to the casinos and let them go enjoy themselves. Well, these guys are on average 7 foot tall, easy. They never stop growing. The older they are, the taller they are. So if they're really old, they get so tall where their bodies don't even want to work anymore. And so he's talking about this. And so that's why I said to the casinos, like, come on, you're full of shit. Nobody's taking nobody to a casino. Get out of here. And then all of a sudden we started getting witnesses call in. So I had him give a limited description on the show. So I started asking these people, and they were giving great descriptions of what he gave me in private. I was like, son of a bitch. So I started calling and talking to him, and then some more people came forward. All together, we ended up like with 50 witnesses out of Las Vegas who said they seen these things in Vegas. Now, is it one of those things where everybody piles on? It could be, but since some of it hadn't been talked about in public yet,
Yeah.
I was kind of thinking, well, maybe something went on here. Maybe we didn't see. Maybe there was something to all of this. They're just supposed to be a race that lives on the other side of the galaxy. They use us as a stepping stone for jumping to another one of the spiral arms, the outer spiral arm.
Uh-huh.
See, in the old days, everybody thought we were the outer band. Come to find out, we're not. The galaxy is bigger than we thought. Originally, it was 100,000 light years across. Now it's 160,000 light years across, which takes us from the outer band to one band in.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of being the farthest band out, we're the second to farthest band out, the arms around. So that's So they said they use us as a jumping to go to that band, to whoever they're visiting. And the government was fully functionally aware of them, and the government was working some type of limited technology program for letting them stay there. That's his entire story.
Crazy.
Just recently, I was, I have what they call a standing invitation to Area 51. Yeah, well, I'll never go, but still. I've been to Area 51 a couple times outside Area 51, but recently I've met some people, like the gentleman in charge of Space Command, but I've met some other generals recently, and they said, you got that high clearance on, you can come by any time. I should just call me, and I'll have somebody meet you at the gate and drive you in, and we'll go on a tour. I'm like, yeah, go on a tour. I'll never get out of this place again. Screw you and your tours, buddy. When people tell me stuff like that, I just look at them like, you're on crack. There ain't no way. I don't care if it's legit, not legit. There ain't no way you get me to drive up in Area 51. It's not going to happen. I'm just not going. But it's like this guy. He's a very famous gentleman. He's always trying to get me to come to his house in L.A. I'm like, dude, I'm never coming to your house. I said, I've heard horror stories about what goes on at your house. I'm never coming out there. Oh, you can't believe that. I said, whether I believe it or not, I'm never coming to your house, so don't worry about it. He's very rich, very famous, runs a big organization. Tells me I ain't never coming out there. Because, we don't usually talk about this, but we have spies and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Like the rail. Oh, yeah, we have people inside the Raelians. We have people inside other organizations, religious organizations, we just, over the years, a friend of mine, Jason Wilson, he was the first one to ever infiltrate the Raelians. Oh, people, y'all know who the Raelians are. They are a UFO cult, is the best way I can say it. About 60,000 members strong. The guy's been trying to buy the Temple Mount in Israel for like 2 decades now. He's bought all kind of land around it, but he's been trying to buy the Temple Mount because that's where he says the aliens are coming to land. He wants to build a spaceport there. Big, huge, and they're a cult. And let me tell you what, from some of the stuff that goes on, they're definitely a cult. If you like having lots of sex, go join. That's all I can say, y'all. But it's just, but things like that, other organizations besides these we've infiltrated, organizations I've talked about, we've got people inside. MUFON, I used to keep a bunch of people in MUFON, but MUFON, I used to love y'all, and I almost destroyed y'all, but D. Andrew asked me not to, so I quit. But still, grow up, become a real organization. Stop telling me you don't know what UFOs are after 50 years. Walter Anders must be rolling over in his grave somewhere.
Right.
They did a speech a while back about the things they know. We're pretty sure that UFOs might be extraterrestrial. Really?
Yeah.
That's all you learn in 50 years? I learned way more than that. I'm thinking, come on.
The Mutual UFO Network.
Yeah.
I don't know if UFOs are a thing.
I don't want to hate on them because, but now they're more of a, look at the thing they did with Bigelow. So Bigelow goes out here and gives them all this money and says, find me some aliens. So what do? They start flying around first class, buying high dollar equipment, not producing any evidence of any kind, just spending the man's money. And I still remember James Carrion said, you know what? Because they gave him $15,000 just for running it. He gave it back. He called Bigelow and gave it back. But Bigelow ended the contract because they weren't producing anything and just spending money hand over fist. So this was a golden opportunity. You had Bigelow Aerospace backing you up, and you blew it. Because of what? You wanted to go have a good vacation somewhere?
Right.
Buy you a high dollar camera. You shouldn't have even been in a position that high if you couldn't afford a camera or fly somewhere. I mean, come on. I just, and then I was killing. I even had people like Richard Dolan and Stanton Friedman turning on him. I was just taking them out. I was hosting Wake Up USA at the time. I had every famous ufologist you could think on the show, and I told them why MUFON was what, and they were turning on them like they had to quit talking at their conferences and stuff.
Oh wow!
And then a good friend of mine, Dee Andrew, who was my national director at the time, she calls me up. She said, "Joe, Walt did this. You were friends with Walt. Your wife was friends with Walt." I said, "Walt has nothing to do with this anymore." And she said, "Yeah, but still, it's his organization." And she said, and she had breast cancer at the time. She died of breast cancer. She said, "Can you please?" So I said, "All right, you win this argument. I'm done." I actually had 4 female directors working on a particular project, all ended up with breast cancer within a month of each other.
Wow.
None of which worked for it. Well, one's did, and the other 3 don't work for the organization anymore. All of them told me the same thing. November was working on a reptilian project for me, a very serious one. And she had all this stuff under her bed and all this research, and she just got it. And she said, I just had this dream that this was part of it, so I'm packing up everything and I'm sending it to you. And she did. And 6 months later, she went into remission. So it was tough, and it was tough on me because these were all really good friends of mine. They had been with me since the start. 3 of them were founders of the organization, and I was, it was like Carla Turner. That's why myself and Melinda Leslie took up the military abduction thing, because Carla Turner, who was doing a fabulous job, all of a sudden, out of the blue, had stage 4 cancer. She had just had a checkup, and 2 months later, she was dying of stage 4 cancer. So Melinda and I, matter of fact, that's on Coast to Coast. Her and I went on Coast to Coast and did one of the military abduction things on Coast.
Now, do you think that's the government, or do you think that's the reptilians?
No, military abductions is not. It's definitely not the reptilians, and it's not our government per se. So to put this in perspective, like if you're in Europe and you're military abducted, a lot of times they describe the people in outfits like punks, like French policemen almost. When they're in a lot of places in the world, they describe seeing Americans or what we consider like American soldiers or black ops. But different places in the world, it's different groups. So what we figured out what's really going on here is this is like retired admirals, retired colonels, retired people from Boeing, Lockheed. These are people who got together that all know these are cogs in the wheel who became one wheel. Is what they did. They started. They're probably what we call the Men in Black. Is what they really are.
Okay.
That's probably who they are. They definitely do not work for the government. They may have funding from the government. I don't know how to get it, but they don't answer to no one inside the U.S. government. And I doubt maybe more than a handful of people in the U.S. government even know they exist.
So what do they want?
They're out there trying to find out why aliens are here. Because people always tell me, "Oh, the aliens did it." No, If you're not a contactee, the aliens don't want to talk to you. They don't care about our government. They don't, even a little bit. They don't. The government means nothing to them. The government is dirt. We can't even unite our planet. This is a joke to them. Every race we're talking about lives on a united world. We live in a world with 200 countries. They can't even agree on if it's going to rain tomorrow or not. I mean, no matter what we talk about on this planet today, somebody's always going to talk to the opposite side. Even if they know they're wrong, they're still going to take the other side. So, I mean, to the aliens, we're a joke. You know, we just they look at us like, Jesus, people, get it together. And it's not like we haven't had time to do it. You would have thought World War I or World War II might have united the planet. It created the UN, which doesn't do squat, but you know, we're in a. So when you're dealing with the aliens, they just, the government itself needed this group to try to figure out what was going on. So what they do is usually they abduct high-profile contactees or people in some way that have come forward that they can find out. So they don't have a way to just know you're being taken by an alien. They have to wait till someone comes forward or someone else comes forward or a shrink or someone. I have no doubt they have quite a few people working inside the health community because that's where a lot of their people come from. But military abductions usually, and I warn this to people all the time, and there's quite a few famous ones like Karina Wilson, and you can ask. I said, if you come forward and you're somebody that they could be interested in because you may have operations of where your craft works or this, that, or the other thing, they're going to take you. The bitch part for them is from time to time, especially the Greys and reptilians, will come take you back. There's at least a dozen accounts where they've come in and actually physically killed people to remove their contactee. So if you're a contactee and they take you and you don't know anything, they're probably not going to save you. They're not going to let them kill you, but they're not going to save you. But if you're someone who has pertinent information, they will come remove you. They will physically remove you from whoever's holding you and say, sorry, you have no business being with this individual. And it's gotten to the point where the government knows it now. So they're very selective about who they're going to take.
Wow.
Because people ask me all the time, well, why don't you get military abduction? I said, because I know a lot and one of the races might get offended. I said, I get warned a lot, though. It's not like I've never been warned. I mean, I know I've told you the story before, but I was at work one day, not too long after the Twin Towers happened. I was working on that same building when I seen the Twin Towers collapse. And I'm up there working with, I got 20, 24 guys, 20 big, ugly guys. We were replacing, a big roof. It was about 40,000, 50,000 square foot roof. So it's a big roof. And we're taking it off and we're putting a new one on. And I see these guys pull up in this white SUV with tinted windows. And these two guys get out the thing in these gray Armani suits. You could tell from where I was that these were expensive suits. So they get out there and they're looking at us. And I'm looking around the roof. I said, who's in trouble with the Fed? Because as far as I could tell, they were Feds.
Yeah.
So I'm looking around. I'm asking, I'm pointing at everybody. No, I'm not in trouble. So I look down at the guy and I'm pointing and they're shaking their heads. So I'm pointing at me. He shook his head up and down like, oh, shit, what did I do? So I'm going down the ladder. All of a sudden, my whole crew runs up behind. We're coming down with you. I said, you keep your asses up here and behave yourselves. I said, if they try to take me, you get your ass down off the ladder, though. And so they're all standing at the edge of the building just watching. As I'm walking up, the one guy on the side, on the passenger side, unbuttons his jacket, takes it with one finger and pushes it over his 9mm so I could see it. So he had 9mm Glock. I think it was like a 19 or a 20. But anyway, he had a 9mm Glock. He pulls it over so I could see it. And I walk up to him and said, what can I do for you? He said, we really like what you do and we enjoy listening to you and blah, 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 blah. And I've been knowing for a long time they listen in on the conversations because a little red light comes on. So I'm like, really? He said, but no more alien agendas. He said, you remember what happened the other night when you were talking with Alfred Weber and we shut everybody down 15 different times and not just you, but everybody listening to you? He said, it's easy for us to do. I said, yeah. He said, well, let me tell you this. So he told me where my wife was because she was at the doctor at the time and what she was wearing and what chair she was sitting in. Told me where my son was at lunch and what he was doing and who he was doing it with. I was like, and he said, Joe, you drive a lot. It would be nothing for a rig just to accidentally run you and your family off the road and never be seen again. So I said, what is it that you're actually wanting from me? He said, we don't want you to talk about the alien agenda, period. He said, at least not for a couple of more years. I'm like, excuse me? He said, he said, well, you don't speak English? I said, I speak English fine. I said, why are you threatening me again? He said, look, this is not a threat. This is a warning. He said, we listen. You've heard us and we had when we were doing Wake Up USA in the early days of UFO Undercover, they would actually break in and talk on the air. They
Oh,
would
wow.
break into the conversation. They would break into the phone line and into the conversation. And so I never did a show until we get on StreamYard that the little red light wasn't on. That means it's an open line. Somebody's listening in.
Yeah.
And many times I stopped in the middle of a show and started talking to them, saying, I know you're listening. I can see the lines open. What the hell are you doing tonight? Blah, blah, blah. And they just start talking. Freak my producer out every time. Jeff's up there in wherever Captain Kirk was born, and he would just flip out. What was it, 1690 Riverside, Iowa? And he would just flip. And then, they would threaten us, and from time to time they'd do other stuff and threaten us. And we were working on some project, and me and my wife were going to the casino one. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. We were not doing anything alien related. I'm driving down this swamp road. It's 2 in the morning. Nobody ever drives on this road to start off, and it's 2 o'clock in the morning. And I noticed there's been a car shadowing us for about 20 minutes. I'm like, who the hell is this? So we were coming up to a turn where you turn to go to the casino. I said, you know what? I noticed somebody following me. Probably listen. I said, so I'm not going to make the turn. I'm just going to punch it and keep going straight. So I punched it. I was in a Nissan Sentra at the time. So I punched it. I'm up to about 105. And I noticed they started picking up the speed, trying to catch us. So I got right to the edge of the curve like I was going straight, and I just pulled up the brake and locked it up and slid sideways into the turn and took off. Well, they couldn't do it. They were in an SUV, so they blew by the turn, and you heard them lock it up and throw it in reverse.
Oh.
So there's no way they're going to catch me on these little roads, these swampy roads. I'm in a sports car. They're in an SUV. So I'm cruising through. I get to the casino. I pull up. My wife and I are laughing and talking, and she's got a cigarette at the time. She looks over. She said, is that the... I look over. There he is. He's laughing at us and smiling. He's in the SUV's the floor below us. Twice during the night in the casino, he came and sat down next to me. He said, keep up the good work, but, some things you should not talk about.
Wow.
I was like, excuse me? I wanted to just deck him. I was like, I'm thinking, dude, how special forces when I was in the service, right? You may get hurt here. And it happened a few times. They would just make these threats. And it's a couple of times they didn't. Most of the time when they made a threat, they didn't threaten me. They threatened my wife or my kid.
Yeah. Hey,
they
Joe.
Threaten me because they knew it was a waste of time to threaten me. I didn't really give a crap. And it was like one time we were in San Diego. We got stopped. We got caught in this block. That guy comes up to me. He says, "This is a state trooper, by the way." So I'm sitting there, I'm waiting in line. He's in there asking everybody. I don't know what the roadblock was over. And he says, "So how's business been lately? Any new aliens? Anything you'd like to tell us while you're here? Are you coming out here for research?" I'm looking up and I said, "How the hell do you know who I am?" "Well, I ran your name." I said, "First off, you didn't run my name because I still got my license in my hand and I was driving a rental." And I'm thinking, "You didn't run my name." I said, "So what's going on here?" And he's like, "Oh, well, we're just checking up on you, Mr. Joe, and we wanted to make sure everything was good and seeing if you had any new information you'd like to talk about today." I said, "Listen to the show like everybody else." And then the other cop walked up and waved me through.
Hey, Joe, I hate to cut this. There is something wrong with my charger, and I only have 3% battery. And if I don't stop now, I won't be able to save it, and I lost the whole show.
Go on, get out of here, because you're probably right. Mine's probably close. Anytime you want to chat, you know where I'm at.
Hey, I appreciate you, brother, and I'll get you the links as soon as I get this thing edited, okay?
Give the boss lady a hug for me.
Will do. See you, Joe.
Thanks.
Bye.